So we're delighted again to welcome Mick Lynch, and as you know, he was the recipient of the award in 2023, and we didn't really tell him too much before he came. I just kind of mentioned you're getting a little award, because sometimes people who deserve it don't want it and they're very humble, and we were afraid you wouldn't turn up, but they told us afterwards, they write about it on the plane. So we had Mick Lynch and he gave a rousing speech and we all felt fabulous after hearing Mick 2 years ago. And 2 years ago Mick was invited to Glastonbury but didn't make Glastonbury, but did go out of his way to turn up in Cork despite various strikes going on at the time in the UK. But again today we're back with Mick and we're delighted to have you here in your family. We welcome you all to Cork again and for travelling here and for being here. And as you know, since the last time Mick has retired, so it's very good of you to turn up for Mick's wallpapering and gardening tips. But we did corner him earlier and asked him what he was going to talk about. So the title of his speech is The Organised Society, which he followed with by saying whatever that is. So let's find out. So ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for Mick Lynch.
Well, thank you. That's very nice on a Friday afternoon. It's about as polite as the ripple that the Cork hurling team will get back when they re-emerge from whichever hole they're in. It went out on BBC nationwide last week. Everybody was amazed, but a couple of English people said to me, it was a great game, but why did one team stop playing halfway through? And I couldn't answer that, so hopefully you get some more sense today. So thanks to Anne and the organisers of this festival, which is a great event, for the invitation for the second time. I don't know if that's because I was so bad last time I'll have to do better, but it is a great honour to be here back in Cork. I was here a few weeks ago. Cork got a point. Cork City there has got a point. I think that's the one they've got since the clocks went whichever way they go in the spring. But I brought them luck then, so maybe I could bring them some luck tonight against Sligo. So yeah, a great honour. We seem to have events like this breaking out all over Britain and Ireland. There's tons of festivals going on from the east of England, Burston. We've got Glastonbury has got a trade union element to it now as well, and there's festivals all over for all sorts of events, because working class history is international, of course, and the British working class have a fine history of struggle along with the Irish working class, and often the Irish working class were leading the English and the British working class in their struggles in many, many ways, but I won't go into all that history today. But it's great that we've got that, but it's not just about history, it's there to talk about ideas and what we're going to do going forward. But it is more important than ever, I think, to make sure that we do know our history, that we enrich our culture, and the music there at lunchtime was great. And because we've got to win the battle of ideas in our communities. I mean, somebody famous said that about the battle of ideas, but it is the foundation of what we do, as well as the complaints that we have to deal with and the problems. We've got to have some ideas about how we're going to go about resolving workers' issues and the world's issues and the planet's issues these days. So, and our job is to see off the traditional reactionaries, because they're of long standing, the enemy that we've always known, in our case in Britain, the Tories and all their seeming, up until recently, permanent hold on politics and the ruling class that supports them. But now we've got this new hard right militancy developing in Britain, in Ireland. I've seen, you've got somebody in Ireland who's leading a party and he's called Herman, and he stands in front of a load of flags. Which, I don't know what his second name is, a remarkable character, but at least they're split and there's a few of them. But they have got some traction in certain communities and in certain currents of opinion. So we've got to face up to that problem that we've got. But we also have got to create our own agenda. We have to build the alternative as a real and concrete programme, and that we realise it in the here and now, not in some theoretical future, because those that have been around on the left for as long as many of us have had people telling us what we should be doing, how we should be doing it, the theory of it, what we're doing wrong about what we're currently doing and what we should be doing right in the future. But it's all theory, most of it. None of it ever turns into what we're actually going to build in working class communities, because it tends to be the people who don't spout theory all day, who get on with the job of building the institutions of the welfare state, public housing, public cleanliness, sewerage, things like that, you know, the real achievements of what it takes to run a society in the interest of the people right around the clock. So in my contribution today, I'm going to set out some concepts or ideas. Concept sounds a bit grand. Is what I've been thinking, myself and Eddie Dempsey, our new General Secretary, and a few others in our movement, trade union national leaders, going forward. And it's based on the idea of a return to class politics. That's what I believe in, and what many of us in the trade union movement believe in. And a lot of other people don't seem to believe in that anymore. And what I mean by that is a political, economic and social outlook and programme that is relevant and appealing to working people. That's all of the working people. And the working people in any society are the majority in all of those societies. They create the wealth. They make the system work. You hear it on the media about wealth creators, as if Elon Musk creates the wealth, as if Jeff Bezos creates the wealth. Of course, you all know that's untrue. But we need to appeal to everyone, all the working class, in all those communities. And in making this contribution, I've restricted myself to considering the domestic situation in Britain. I wouldn't dare to come over here and tell you what you should do about your political situation, because I know a bit, but I don't know enough to get into the detail. But I'm sure some of what we face resonates here, because capitalism is international. Exploitation is international. It knows no boundaries. It's less boundaried than it's ever been. So I'm sure those issues resonate here, and just a couple of examples. The political and economic orthodoxies that are common to all the main political parties. They all believe in the same things, the ones that are likely to gain power and the ones that are in power now in this country, the one that's in power in Britain, and the one that left power in Britain. They all essentially believe in the same thing. And they're not challenging what's gone on before, and that includes things like outsourcing, which we believe in our union is one of the biggest dangers to working class people. One of the biggest dividers amongst working class people, and one of the biggest dangers to trade unionism and solidarity at work. They also believe in insecure employment, these 0 hours contracts and all that precarious work. They also go along with the widespread alienation felt by working people, which I'm sure is common to this country. Many people feel really pissed off. I know that's not what you should put in a speech, but people are feeling really alienated from the system, from their surroundings, from what's going on at work, what's going on in their communities. And we believe there's a continuous sense of chaos and destabilisation in people's lives and in the community. So we've got to do something about that. And I'm sure that is common if I was doing this in France or Spain or Italy or in anywhere in the United States or any of what is called the developed world. Alienation is more profound now, I think, than it has been in my lifetime, even as a young worker. People didn't feel quite so alienated from the system, in inverted commas, whatever the system is. And we live in a hostile world. We as trade unionists and socialists, or progressives, whatever you want to call yourself, we face a constant onslaught from hostile media, whether it's the mainstream media or the social media, because they propagate the line that the present system of exploitation, the corruption and the poverty, and of course the war, which we're seeing all around the world, and you know there's particular wars that are in focus, such as Gaza. I'm not going to touch on all those issues today. That somehow that whole setup, and it's been with us, the wars that we had when I was growing up in the 60s, seeing it on the telly every night, that this is some kind of unchangeable and permanent setup. That there is no alternative to what we've got now. There might be some slight tweaks and ameliorations, but there isn't a change that you can bring that will change the way the world works. And the very notions that we believe in cooperation and progress and peace itself, that somehow we're stupid, that our beliefs are anachronistic. The elites regard us as being that we're some kind of relic from a progressive past, almost as if we're all, this word liberal, I mean, I'm not a liberal, but the idea that to be called a liberal is the most disgusting thing that you can be called in American life. I find that really strange. Liberty and liberalism was meant to be an honourable thing, and the American Civil War was fought on this basis. Liberty, the right for people not to be held in bondage. And the American Republican Party is challenging that now. That somehow slavery, the holding of another person as a piece of property, is a good thing. It's unbelievable that anyone would say this out loud, apart from in some reenactment of or in a film or something. But these ideas that we have are seen as outdated. And the left, from our point of view, whatever we are, and it's quite hard to define that these days, and I'm sure some of you, like everybody else in the movement, have been through some contortions over a long life of experience. We seem to find ourselves penned in on issues that would usually, or in the past, would have been considered to be individual issues. And if this offends people, I'm sorry about this, but we're here to talk about ideas. So, I'm putting up some challenges to the way some of the movement has gone. Individual issues or personal issues, some issues that would be between yourself and the medical profession, are now out as part of the mainstream of labour movement thinking. Now, I don't regard all of those issues as socialist or trade union issues. They're not. What I believe that the trade union movement is about, and what the socialist movement is about, is making sense of politics and economics and moving our class forward as a whole, moving our societies forward as a whole, moving our countries, whichever countries we live in, moving those societies forward into a better economic and social positions. So we're permanently attacked for our ideas, but we're also attacked, sometimes rightly, for the way that we present ourselves. It's very difficult now to get any mainstream politician to come forward talking about a new economic and social vision, the way that an Attlee, I spoke about Attlee the last time I was here, but if you imagine that Labour government, and you've had governments in Ireland that have made differences every now and again, Attlee came not as a representative of the left of the Labour movement, he was on the right of the Labour movement, but he had a profound change. Him and his colleagues that had been in local government in the 20s and 30s, seeing the depths of the depression and the economic downturn, and of course wars, not belittling that, had a vision that they wanted to permanently change society. And what their achievement was in 45, and for that government that changed Britain profoundly, was to get everyone to believe in it. People that had been reactionary, people that had been conservative, said more or less through the ballot box and through what they did in local and regional government, that time had gone and we needed a new time. And it is still with us. The remnants of it are still there. And of course, the jewel in the crown in Britain is our National Health Service. And there's other remnants of it that are around. But in my view, it's a miracle, really, given the onslaught that we're under from the right and from the mainstream media and the oligarchs that control it. It's a miracle that our ideas still exist. In some ways, it's a miracle that we can still keep going as a movement, that we're still millions strong in Britain. And it's also a miracle that when you dig down, people still believe in what we believe in. And this has come through in the polling of reform voters who have become obsessed by certain issues. But when you actually ask them what they think about public ownership, what they think about public spending, what they think about measures of social solidarity, helping other people, they all stray onto the side of supporting traditional Labour Party socialist values. And we've got to do something about that, because somehow we've managed to alienate the very people that we should be appealing to. So there's got to be a different way forward for our movement. So we've got to keep our ideas, our culture, our history, and all of that alive through an independent working class movement. And it's got to be independent. It's got to stand up for itself and not be sponsored or mentored or under the control of anyone apart from the working class. And if you want a working class vote in any society, I believe, you should have to sign up properly to a working class agenda And in Ireland, I think that means you need a united left. I was at a meeting in Dublin where there was a proposition put forward for united left in future elections. And I think we as a Labour movement in Ireland, because we are united, the British and Irish Labour movements in that sense, we've got to make sense of putting forward a working class agenda that we make those politicians sign up to our agenda, not beg them to do things for us. If they want our votes, we've got to be organised as a movement to make them sign up to what we want. And we have to reflect why we become so marginalised in working class communities, particularly in Britain. I don't know if it's still the same or if that echoes in Ireland as well. But if you went out tomorrow in certain areas as a Labour canvasser, or even for this putative new party, you would get some really hostile reactions in certain areas, and you would have to be careful, I believe, about your personal security in some areas, and that is a real problem. And I believe the problem that lies behind that is that the people that are leading our politics, that are meant to represent workers, have abandoned universalism. They've abandoned collectivism, solidarity, and the principle that you move the whole working class forward as a whole, not individual strands of it being advantaged or being picked out as worthy causes. I think we've become trapped on the left in negativism. Everything is rubbish all of the time. I get tired of going to Labour meetings and socialist meetings and fringe meetings where everything is rubbish. There's no fun or crack in many left-wing gatherings. I hope that's not true of this one. But you certainly wouldn't recommend to some people who like a bit of crack to go along to that meeting. It's going to be really great. You'll really love it. I mean, it's a real problem because in the past, and I'm not just harking back to the past, when the Labour movement was more comprehensive, and I'm talking about right across our societies, if you look at the strength of the German Social Democratic Party, way back when, 100 years ago and whatever, they had a comprehensive view of what their movement was about, that went from culture, from the kindergarten, scouting groups, everything was covered. Now, people say, well, look what happened, the rise of the right. But we've had periods in our time when it was a bit more fun to be on this side of the table. And I think that's a real problem. But our politicians, the people that lead us, and I'm looking at particularly the Labour Party in Britain, they don't challenge the free market anymore. They don't challenge it whatsoever. They don't challenge outsourcing. I've spoken to Labour politicians, front bench, cabinet ministers. They don't even understand what outsourcing is. They understand, if you go to Cork Airport, there's nobody working for Cork Airport cleaning the toilets or fueling the planes or sweeping the common areas. They're all outsourced. It's the same in every city, every society across the European Union. Every politician in Europe and North America and in every advanced economy has signed up to outsourcing. And outsourcing is the slow death of trade unionism. We have to get people working directly for the organisations that are running the economy. We've also become trapped in identity. I go to so many meetings where people are talking about their identity. I've got to tell you, most working class people now are tolerant. And if people don't like this, I'm afraid it's what I believe. And I'm retired now, so I don't have to take a particular line. Working class people are sick and tired of people talking about themselves. You don't go to socialist meetings to talk about yourself. You're there to talk about us, what we're going to do about our class and how we're going to change the position of our class in relation to the problems that we've got, which are brought on us by another class. That's the fundamental of what we believe in. We don't believe in talking about ourselves as individuals all of the time. That doesn't mean that we're not interested in equality, we're not interested in fairness, that we're against discrimination. But we must get back to talking about our class position in relation to politics and the economy and ideas. It's not true that the answer to people's problems are individual answers. The answer to public housing is not to solve one person's problem. The answer to the water system in Britain, which is absolutely knackered, politely, and I know you're going to tell me off if I swear, as a good teacher, cannot be resolved through talking about individual problems. These are whole infrastructural national problems, and they are profoundly difficult to resolve if all we're talking about is individual issues. It's the same at work. I mean, I've been a shop steward or rep nearly my whole working life. You have to deal with individuals' problems, but what is the most interesting thing is taking forward your organisation. Usually the people who've got the most problems, because they're always in front of the governor because they're sick all the time, are your biggest problem as well. And if you ended up going to branch meetings or national union conferences talking about all the people that were sick all the time, you'd never get anywhere. These are side issues compared to where the movement is meant to be going, where an organised society is meant to be going. So I don't believe that socialism and the labour movement are about those issues. I believe it's about the organised collective, and all of our work should be on the basis of what's best for the working class as a whole, or what's best for this entity, what's best for this location, not for all the individuals. If we treated everybody as an individual, we wouldn't need trade unions at all. They could just deal directly with the management. So if we're to regain our position as true and authentic representatives of the working class, we have to have a set of beliefs, principles and programmes of actions that act in the interests of the working class as a whole. So trade unions will always do the basics, and I'm sure many of you have done it. We have to win things for people at work so that they respect our ability to take them forward, and we can demonstrate tangible benefits and improvements. But there can be no secure bubble for trade unions and trade unionists of just workplace activity, what in Britain they call the bread and butter. Why don't you just deal with the bread and butter? Well, if you've got profound problems that are institutional or organisational or national or political, you can't deal with it on a bread and butter basis. There can't be non-political trade unions. There are some trade unions who think, oh, I'll just go around dealing with this issue. Well, if you're working in the NHS, it's a highly political problem. If you're working in local authorities, you can't be non-political, because the people that get elected are going to come down on you if they don't like it. And reform in Britain now has now taken over multiple councils. And their mission is to cut to the bone. Doge. They're running around saying we're going to have Doge. I can't remember what that means now. I think it just means cut everything to the bone and sack all the workers. Whatever way you arrange the letters, we've got people in working class communities that don't realise they're voting for their own demise. They're voting for the end of their own jobs. They're voting for the end of all the services that they depend on. Now that is a political struggle. We have to defend our jobs and our communities and our members. We also have to defend the services that we work in, and that is a political struggle. So we live in an unfair and unequal world. I'm sure you know that. That's the truism of the decade. So trade unions always need to be political. We need to be immersed in political and social campaigning. But the prize is a better society, not an amelioration, a quick fix, although those help. And we see in Britain and across the world, the post-war advances in the welfare state and the building of a more equal society have been under sustained attack in this modern capitalist world for decades, since Thatcher and Reagan came in. And it's a right-wing ideological consensus, which I'm afraid our political representatives have given up on and adopted. It's just a fact. There's nobody challenging the consensus, certainly in Britain. The reactionaries and the warmongers are now in power, or on the brink of it in many places. And that new right that we've got is the latest in the tradition of the hard right philosophy, as I said, that's been around since the 1980s. It's not new, it's just refreshed. It's new, old wine in new bottles, as they used to say. The approaches and policies that we are seeing implemented, the latest developments of that Thatcherite and Reagan social and economic consensus. The left, including the trade unions, I believe, have been remarkably unsuccessful. If you put it on a balance sheet, we've been remarkably unsuccessful in winning the battle for ideas, The political fight in terms of elections, we're not even winning those until recently in Britain. And when we do, we get a shadow of what we wanted. And winning power. And we must also say that we haven't been all that successful in industrial relations. You've had a film this morning about aspects of the miners' strike. And I've got to tell you, in Britain, since the miners' strike was defeated, since we lost that class struggle, we have been on the back foot ever since. We've lost more than 50% of the membership. When I left school in 78, there were 13.5 million trade unions. There are now 5.5 million trade unions in Britain. I don't know what the numbers are like in Ireland, probably a bit healthier. That is because of deindustrialisation. We had a government that knew what it was doing. I hated them. Thatcher wanted to deindustrialise Britain. She went ahead and did it. She had a vision of an economy driven by the city, driven by privatisation, driven by a dog-eat-dog philosophy, and she's achieved it. The left failed to oppose it. We've had fight-backs occasionally, but they failed to win it. It's got to be said that's true in France. It's true in Germany. You might reach your own conclusions about Ireland. But if you look at the French trade union movement, it's in disarray. They've lost all the battles on pensions, on privatisations. Macron is running rings round the French trade union movement. I meet them all of the time because I used to work for a railway owned by the French government. Ironic. I worked for a private company that was owned by the French railway, which was a nationalised industry. But anyway, that's capitalism for you. So these governments are seeking to renege on everything that we built, and you know that, but I'm not going to go on about it. But the existing agreements that we've had, and which is what our strike was about on the railway, the agreements we had for decades, they wanted to rip them all up, put us out to those casualised and outsourced terms. We came through that dispute. I'm not saying we won it. We won pay rises and we kept our contracts. And sometimes the victory is in outlasting your opponents, because you keep your organisation together, you don't get defeated, and if you're still standing when they've gone, and they did go, Sunak, Truss, May, we've had more Tory Prime Ministers than Cork City's had goals this season. And they've gone, and now we've got whatever it is we've got now, in terms of Starmer. So they've been successful, and now we've got the US president. I don't want to say his name, I'm hoping to get through the weekend without saying it. He's on the rampage, and look at the major corporations. So we had a period where the major corporations in the US and over here were signing up to these equality agendas, signing up to these progressive logos and progressive mission statements. They've all been ripped up. Almost immediately, they turned their coats. And they've signed up to his agenda entirely. Even these groovy ones, you know, the ones that don't wear shirts when they're giving these presentations and walk all over the hall, telling you what a great product they're delivering. They've all signed up. They've done more right-wing than he is in some cases. So we've got to lead a fight back. There's nobody that's going to come to our rescue, certainly not professional politicians. And it's got to be a long-term and permanent fight for the people's mindset, for ideas and policies, for the building of a comprehensive and universal workers' movement that wins the battle of ideas and puts in place political programmes in favour of the working people, that rolls back the attempted destruction of the welfare state and the very idea of collectivism and human solidarity. And I think working class people are in a state of confusion. I was up in Belfast doing an event up there last year outside Belfast City Hall, and on the other side, across the police vans, was a load of people with Ulster banners and UVF flags, and another load of people from Dublin with the Irish national flag. I thought, I'm dreaming here. I was with the Green Party and the SDLP leader, fair play to them, out there having a go at these people, and there was a real sense of menace. A real sense of menace from these people, coming from all of them from working class communities, but many of them put there by the expertise of British fascists and Nazis, who are again in turn backed up by American ultra-right. That's what's behind all this. And they're in a state of confusion, as I said, and many of them are in a state of despair. and what they perceive to be modern life, a modern life that has spun out of control, where communities are in decline. All the time in the British media we see stories about communities in decline, and there seems to be little prospect for working people of improvement. And there's a widespread, and this is a really profound thing that we didn't used to have, I think, a widespread perception of victimhood. Somehow I, as a working class person, I'm a victim of something that's happening to me, with no ability to analyse, it seems to me, amongst much of our communities, what is actually going on around them, because they've lost the political life that many of us grew up in. Many of us as youngsters would have grown up in political households, would have grown up in political communities. Different traditions, I get that, particularly in Ireland. Too many traditions in some cases, but there was a real sense in many working class communities, certainly in Britain, in the industrial areas, but even in bits of London that I grew up in and other people, there was a real hold that trade unions and the Labour Party, which were the same thing, by the way, they had a hold on working people's lives, and people would have been embarrassed to be a Tory, a working class Tory. They would have been embarrassed to rent their flat to another worker. Nobody's embarrassed about that anymore. It's great. I've got this flat, got it off my mum, now I can exploit another worker. Landlordism is just an acceptable thing in English society now. I think it's the same here. So there's something wrong in our working class communities, and we've lost them. I believe the Cork manager lost the dressing room at half-time last week, and I think that same analogy is true of the Labour movement. We've lost the dressing room in terms of the working class in many of our communities. So I think we need to build an alternative, and the foundations of that are these things I'm going to give you now. One, we've got to challenge the spiral of decline in working class lives with our approach based on universalism and social solidarity, and return dignity to working people. Many working class people believe they live an undignified life at the moment. Many of them are on in-work benefits. I'm old-fashioned. I don't believe that anyone working should be on a benefit. The employer should pay a wage that fulfills the needs of that person's life and society. The taxpayer should not fund any employer through paying benefits. It's a straightforward issue. Secondly, we need class politics. Some people are afraid of that term, class politics. Clement Attlee wasn't afraid of it. Harold Wilson, Jim Callaghan, these old right-wing Labour politicians, they believed in class politics. They believed in raising the working class. We had a lot of problems with them, and many people in this room wouldn't have agreed with that, but they never lost this idea that the Labour movement was about class. That's the essence of what it's meant to be. So we need to address the real needs of the people as we find them now, and not become detached in leftism and posturing. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of reading these papers that people sell you at meetings. Take the most extreme posture you can on any issue. None of those people ever built a council estate. None of those people ever laid the pipes for the gas network. None of those people built the libraries and the cottage hospitals and the NHS. All they do is criticise everything that reformist politicians have achieved in the past. Now, if we had reformist Labour politicians in power now that could do the things that were done in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, I'd be delighted, I'll tell you that. Absolutely delighted. People who saw that building council housing is a transfer of wealth from the rich to the working class. That's how you get wealth distribution, by building institutions and services that working class people use. We need to invest in our economy. Now, you've got this big windfall coming, I believe, from whoever. Let's see how that's spent. We don't have any of that in Britain. We don't want to tax anyone, it seems to me. And you've gone through that in the past. Somebody else imposed a tax. But we need investment in the economy, in the infrastructure, and in the environment, and in the people. Many people in Britain now are completely de-skilled. Some of them don't know how to go to work. Now, this sounds very old-fashioned, but there are a lot of people in Britain, not youngsters, people in their 20s, 30s and 40s, they don't know how to go to work 5 days a week. They don't know how to fulfil shift requirements, and they don't understand the discipline of the workplace. It's a remarkable phenomenon we're getting now. And any active trade unionist would tell you that. Some of the people you have to deal with at work have got very strange attitudes. You know, I do say to people on the railway, we work 24/7. We work Christmas Day, all of it. And they go, well, why do we do that then? People want to get on a train. Hospitals are open all of the time. We have to have discipline in our community. We want the work to do, and when we get the work to do it with good wages and conditions, then we go and do the work. And when we withdraw our labour, they feel the effects of us not doing the work. Now, there's a real problem in Britain. There's 9 million people living on benefits. It's more than the population of Ireland. It's more than your entire economy living full-time on benefits, not the pension, on in-work and out-of-work benefits. Labour's right on that. Something has to be done. I'll tell you what needs to be done. The employers need to pay. The employers need to employ these people on proper wages and give them proper facilities so that their healthcare needs and other impairments are dealt with. It's not the taxpayer that should be paying for that, because that's other working class people paying for working class people to not be at work. And we're bringing people in from India and elsewhere to do the work that English people aren't doing. Now, that is a very controversial thing to say, but working class people want to hear about that conversation. The people that are getting up at 5:30 in the morning to do their shifts want to know what everyone else is doing. And we've got to face that as a trade union movement. We are an organisation of workers. And workers have got to be at the front of what we do, and their communities. It doesn't mean we leave anyone behind. It means that we've got to face the idea that we work for our living and we work under strong collective agreements. And I think this is a real issue that we've got to face. We need that investment so that those that don't invest, the vulture capitalists, are punished when they don't invest. And those that do invest, we reward them fiscally. And we need democratic organisation and planning, an organised society, to end the free market chaos. If you ever listen to the BBC and listen to what's going on about our water in Britain, it's absolutely incredible. We had a system of municipal and regional water ownership, which was low cost and generally clean. It was underinvested, privatised by Thatcher. The vultures from all around the world have absolutely destroyed the system. It's, you know, we get as much rain as you, not many people believe it. The asset is free. It drops from the sky. If there's anything that should be in public ownership, surely it should be the water that we drink and bathe in and do other things into, and then they throw it back into the water we're drinking. That's what they do in Britain. It's incredible. We had a drought there getting underway. As soon as it rained, they opened all of the sluices and let all of the sewage into all of the rivers. A record poisoning of our environment. We need democratic organisation. We need planning that everyone's behind, because the free market is bringing chaos, insecurity and incoherency amongst working people. And as I've said all along, and I think I said the last time, we need to rebuild the workers' movement as the instrument of change and delivery that both protects people and builds for the future. I've said this at the TUC General Council, which is a mythical thing in England, in the British trade union movement. It's the senior body of our organisation, our movement. I said, do you think anyone out there amongst working people is looking to the trade unions for answers about the way forward? I don't think anyone at all is. If you went onto a council estate in Nottinghamshire or Derbyshire, the middle of England, and say, who's going to solve all these problems? Nobody's going to say the trade unions. Nobody. Because we've lost our place. We've lost our relevance. So, across Britain, millions of people know the system is broken. Every year work seems to pay less, the necessities of life seem to cost more, and the task of raising a family gets harder for the majority of our people. At the same time, prosperity has become the preserve of the few. The top 50 richest families in the UK now hold more wealth than the poorest 34 million. That's 50% of our population. Combine these realities with the decaying infrastructure which I've mentioned, dysfunctional local government. If you want to do yourself in, go into local government in Great Britain. You've got no power, no money, and no credibility. You can't do anything except implement the cuts from the centre. I don't know if it's the same here. It probably is. It'd drive you bonkers. Everything is outsourced, and there's a rapidly changing demographic, which we have to deal with. Not just new migrants, but people are getting older, people are different to the way they were, families are different to the way that many of us conceived that they would be, and people, I think, as I've said before, many are disorientated. And that is causing, because of a vacuum, because there's so little coming from the organised left, a turn towards reform. Now, Labour was elected on a manifesto that had one word on its front page, and that was change. And they promised there'd be no return to austerity, and they would introduce a new deal for working people that would reverse decades of decline. Now, to give the Labour government, from the RMT's point of view, my union, gives them some credit. They've made some progress on bringing our railways back into public control. That's happening. And the Employment Rights Bill is meant to give a new deal. That new deal for workers will come through the Employment Rights Bill. It's been watered down all the time because of the pressures of the employers. But what it does, as I said at the top of this meeting, it gives individuals rights. The focus is on giving each person a right to go to a tribunal, to request this, that and the other. It gives no power, no additional power to the trade unions. And what we need is sectoral collective bargaining, where we negotiate and agree for every worker in the sector, whether it's transport, health, engineering or whatever, construction, typically sectors like that. It won't give us any of that whatsoever. So I think it's going to be a lost opportunity, but we've got to make them do more. But it's not been enough to stem the tide. Most people in Britain will not know what the Employment Rights Bill is, and that's a shame. They're getting more rights, they don't even know what they are. And it isn't turning this tide, and people still feel they're left behind. When they consider the impact of the policies, of their policies, Labour, if you could name them, what Labour's policies are, they appear to be more concerned about what Westminster, they call them policy wonks. I don't know if you've heard this term. These people that sit around worrying about policy all the time. It's to satisfy them, rather than the lives of the people. You'd think a Labour Party would be getting out in the communities and the estates and saying, we're going to do this for you, we're going to do that for you, your life's going to be different after 5 years of Labour. And they did have one. They had an environmental bill that was going to spend 28 billion a year on retooling council estates, changing them so that they were fit for habitation and fit for the environment. They dropped it at the first hint of pressure from the city and from the commentators. So their sterile approach, Labour, it seems to be out of touch, and you hear this all the time from working people. Starmer knows nothing about our lives. They're out of touch with the fears of millions of people, and they are living in a country characterised by chaos, dysfunction and decline. And for decades now, the ground has been disintegrating under people's feet. Jobs are paying less in real terms. Housing, I've got to tell you, in Ireland, costs more. That's just an underestimate. Housing is the disgrace of this century in both of our economies, I believe. Services which creaked under austerity are now collapsing, virtually. Privatisation stole our common wealth. We used to own British Airways, we used to own British Petroleum, British Steel, all of the energy network in Britain. When we had the energy crisis, not one Labour politician went on the telly and said, you know, before 1980, we owned the oil company, we owned the gas company, we owned all of the electricity companies and all of the distribution network. We could have set the price of energy in this country, but at the whim of the Secretary of State, by an order in Parliament. Not one of them said it, that planning the economy and direction in certain circumstances is better than the madness of the market. The madness of the market means we're functionally at war with Russia and importing all of their gas. What a situation. I don't understand this situation at all. I mean, Churchill, God love him, I know he wasn't very popular in certain areas, but he didn't say, let's keep importing the coal from Germany so we can run the steel industry in the middle of the Second World War. Incredible. But there we go. That's the market for you. So we've got a society now where the rich prey on the weak. And there's little justice. And there's few reasons to believe in a future. I thought it was going to be more crack than this, but it's not coming out. And Starmer's government has failed in that alternative. But the Labour movement can put an alternative forward. And it should. It's time that we responded to the chaos with the very thing that stitched our social fabric together in the first place. Organisation. All of you who have been at trade union movements would say the heart of what we do is organisation. That's true at work. But it's also true in the economy. It's true in our communities. It's true in society. We need an organised society that brings security, dignity and prosperity to the working class. If you take our football clubs in Britain, the NHS, our democratic rights, mass education, the welfare state itself, and all of the public services that were an envy of many societies at one stage, they were all brought together by the vision of the Labour movement. They manifested themselves because we had Labour governments backed up by probably the strongest trade union movement in the world at that time. That meant that we really crystallised what we believed in into what we were doing and what we built. The Labour movement built the institutions of the social state via a united Labour movement, and we kept the focus on continuous achievement at local, regional and national level. It wasn't all in one day. The movement knew what it wanted and it knew how to set about achieving it. It didn't just keep talking about it. What we'll do when this pub closes? They went out and built those things and achieved them. And in doing so, they enhanced the lives of millions of people. And that is the achievement that the Labour movement can bring forward. Too many of those things, maybe the majority of those things, have been stolen from us. But we can take that vision of an organised society forward and rebuild the foundations that sustain community life. To do that, we must begin in the economy, because that's what dictates living standards. We desperately need an economy that is organised, where working people can see the plan to tackle decline and feel its impacts on their day-to-day lives. That means an economy with a genuine strategic role for the state through industrial policy and with a financial system that serves the people, not a cluster of banks with a country attached, which is what we've got now. You might feel the same. I think you've got a cluster of data centres with some counties attached, maybe 3/4 of a country, I don't know. It means an economy where there's strong collective bargaining. Most working class people eyes will roll when you say what we need is collective bargaining. But they don't know what they've lost. They don't know the difference between this society and a place like Norway or Sweden or Denmark, where collective bargaining and a collective structure and an economic plan is at the heart of what the society does, where trust in politicians is twice as high as it is in the rest of the European economies. Collective bargaining in 1979. I left school in 1978. It's hard to believe. Look at me. Fresh as a daisy. 16. What was I doing? 80% of workers were covered by collective agreements in 1979 in Britain. An incredible number. Today is 26%. Incredible. 3/4 of people in Britain do not have the rights to collective arrangements. That is what is destroying working class communities, I believe. People don't know how to say no properly without going on sick. People don't know how to demand what they need because there's no collective organisation available to them at work. And of course, if you're collective at work, especially in the traditional industrial areas, that bleeds. Or is it osmosis? You're a teacher, don't tell me. Through osmosis, it used to run the towns and the villages. If you went to a South Wales or Yorkshire mining village before the strike, the lodge secretary would also be the town council leader. Some of that wasn't always great, but the movement ran the town. And from that area, from South Wales, from Nye Bevan and those people, came the very idea of social medicine and the NHS. That's what we can deliver if we have an organised society where the unions are in the lead. We need policies that aim to rebuild community, to ensure that everyone feels they have a stake in society and to replace growing fragmentation with social cohesion. I don't know a bit,
You're fine.
We need policies that reward those that contribute to the Commonwealth and really punishes those that take from it, punishes those vulture capitalists, taxes them to the hilt if they don't contribute to the organised plan for our society. The days then when we are tolerant of those that plunder public assets, prey on the vulnerable and subject people to violence and fear must end. On the right, they are saying that all of our problems come from immigration. Certainly we need to have frank discussions on migration and immigration policy, but without collective institutions that brings us together, that create the bonds between neighbours, workmates, schoolmates, clubmates, no community in the country will be spared from the atomisation that we're seeing, not only in Britain but across the developed world. The Labour government has failed to provide that vision, as its dismal approval ratings show. But it isn't primarily responsible. The chief agent of chaos and division is still the market. Every time the corporate elite pursues profit at the expense of the public good, our society becomes that bit more fractured and that bit harder for working people. This was true when big business, but let's not forget, the Conservatives carried out, and the European Union, is a controversial thing, carries out the policy of the ruling class. Deindustrialisation, as I mentioned, in favour of the City of London, when they privatised our mail, rail, water, energy and everything else, and pushed that outsourcing agenda, the people that gained were the ruling class. And it caused wages and conditions to stagnate. I don't know what you can do when it's stagnating permanently. That just would be a complete transformation. Fossilised, I suppose. And it's been the longest period of stagnation in wages and real earnings in British history. And then they came up, these CEOs and the wiseacres on the other side, 0 hours contracts. We'd never dreamed of a 0 hours contract when I left school. Fire and rehire. Never heard of that. And I woke up when I was General Secretary on St Patrick's Day and they just said everyone at P&O has been fired this morning by text and Zoom. Somebody dreams this up. Somebody comes up with these ideas and then they go and implement them. But we're not doing the same. This is the problem. We're reactive. We're not on the front foot. But our opposition to the elite should not be taken as an expression of resentment or envy for their success. I actually believe in a mixed economy. There's always room for social and private enterprise and people making good for themselves. It's nonsense that we're full of envy. The Labour movement is against rapid growth in billionaire wealth, the oligarchs. Oligarchs aren't just in Russia, they're all over our economy. Because it gives them, we're against them, because it gives them unfettered power to shape our economy in their interests. And let's not forget, they act as a class. And we must act as a class in response. We want economic power democratically harnessed so that it serves the needs of the people and our environment. To challenge this power, we must get on with the job of redistributing wealth and ensuring that ownership is diffuse and not concentrated in the hands of the oligarchs. And we must remove in Britain the anti-trade union laws so that we can act effectively for workers and make sure that the workplace is not the Wild West as it's increasingly become. It must also mean an economy defined by national democratic control as opposed to politicians taking their cues from bond markets, big business or speculators. If you say bond market in front of Rachel Reeves, she'll run and jump in the broom cupboard because she is absolutely petrified of what the Financial Times and the commentators think. Now that's not the way Labour, socialist politicians, social democratic politicians, whatever you want to call them. If you haven't got the vision to see through any kind of mild criticism, you're never going to get anywhere. And through our movement, the TUC and the trade unions, we must develop a series of coordinated campaigns, including industrial action where necessary, that create pressure for Labour to act. If we fail to offer serious, workable solutions on behalf of working people, the rise of reform and the hard right is inevitable. The working class in Britain is alienated and disillusioned. They are right to feel that way. They've been betrayed. But the solution to this is not more division across national, racial or religious lines. The solution is working class unity. The people we live besides and work besides are not our enemies, and nor are they our competitors. They are our community, and we've got to get our heads around that. We're not deporting anyone. We're not sending them back. We're going to live alongside them and help them. We must fight alongside them in the workplace, in our towns and cities, to rebuild hope. We must defeat the pernicious dog-eat-dog ideology that has riven us apart. In the face of chaos and resignation amongst workers, it is for the trade union movement to rally the people and put forward a vision. It's time to rebuild our movement, not split it with new and fractional, hopeless political parties. Our united movement, the political, industrial, cultural sectors, must have the courage to form a new society that works for us all. We must build the organised society that ends the chaos, the insecurity and the fear, that delivers a plan underpinned by the trade union principles of human solidarity and unity, that grows the common wealth and the common good for us all. Thanks very much.